This is the Everyday AI Show, the everyday podcast where we simplify AI and bring its power to your fingertips. Listen daily for practical advice to boost your career, business, and everyday life.
I've been struggling with this one for years. There's so many instances when I want to personally use generative AI and large language models to maybe help me complete a certain task faster, or maybe to go into more depth. But then I think, okay, yes, this is going to save me some time. It's going to make me more productive. But am I just going to get dumb over time, right? The more I blindly hand off knowledge work to a large language model, right? So it's something I'm excited to talk about today, kind of this dichotomy of, okay, how can we, still use the best technology that I think any of us have ever seen maybe in our lifetime, yet still keep our brains sharp, right? How can we find that balance of being productive, but not just getting dumber at the same time? This is going to be a fun one. I can't wait. What's going on, y'all? My name's Jordan Wilson, and welcome to Everyday AI. This is your daily live stream podcast and free daily newsletter, helping us all not just learn AI, but how we can leverage it to grow our companies and our careers. So it starts here with this very podcast. I'm excited for our guest for today, but it continues in our newsletter. So if you haven't already, please make sure to go to youreverydayai.com, sign up for the free daily newsletter. We're going to be recapping some of the most important points and takeaways from this very conversation. And laying it all out for you, right? So you can actually take this info to grow your company and your career. All right. So before we get started, as a reminder, I just got back from the NVIDIA conference. We're going to have a ton more out of GTC over the next week or two. I had so many amazing interviews. I can't wait to, release these over the next few days. So just make sure to keep an eye out for those. All right. Before we get started, I first want to go over some of the AI news for March 21st. So first, OpenAI has launched its advanced AI models for voice. So OpenAI has introduced 3 new voice models, which are called GPT-4o Transcribed, GPT-4o Mini Transcribed, and GPT-4o Mini TTS, or text-to-speech. Yeah, gotta love the naming. All right, so these models are designed for transcription and text-to-speech applications and available through OpenAI's API for third-party developers. So the models include some pretty nice groundbreaking features such as real-time streaming, speech-to-text, and customizable voice presets. So users can modify accents, pitch, tone, and even emotional expressions through simple text prompts. So the new models significantly outperform OpenAI's previous Whisper model, which was one of the best models in the world, achieving a 2.4 word error rate in English compared to Whisper's higher error rates. They also perform well in noisy environments across 100 plus languages. All right. OpenAI also launched a pretty cool competition, which is kind of rare for them. So we'll make sure to link to that in today's newsletter. All right. Next, Gmail and Google have introduced some actual AI-powered features for Gmail now. So Google has rolled out a new AI-powered search feature in Gmail to display more relevant email results based on factors like recency, frequent contacts, and most clicked emails. Previously, Gmail's search function only showed emails containing entered keywords in chronological order, often leading to overwhelming and irrelevant results. So users can now toggle between most relevant and most recent search results when using this new AI feature. I'm excited to test this one out because, the old kind of Gemini for AI, it was just kind of a bad search, right? So hopefully this one's better. We'll find out. Speaking of something getting better and about time, Amazon's Claude finally has real-time access to the web. I don't know. This is like you've had an iPhone for 10 years and it just started text messaging like today. Anthropic's super late on this, but they did announce a major update to Claude, enabling it to search and process information on the internet in real time. So Claude's new web search feature is now available for paid users in the US, allowing the AI assistant to access and synthesize up-to-date information instead of relying solely on training data. So the feature includes direct source citations, a move designed to address concerns about misinformation and AI hallucinations while boosting user trust. So yeah, I know I've been kind of hard on Anthropic for this very reason, but I think if I'm being honest, it was kind of getting almost like dangerous to use any large language model not connected to the internet. Yes, you still have to do your due diligence to make sure these AI in large language models aren't just hallucinating information, but still. All right. Yeah, we're going to have a lot more on those stories and ton in our newsletter. So make sure you go to youreverydayai.com. All right, let's get to it. Good to be back live. Good to see y'all on the LinkedIn and YouTube machines, Big Bogey Face and Brian and Jay, Zach, Michelle, Jessica, everyone else. If you have any guests, questions for our guests, make sure to get them in. Michelle, Sandra, Cecilia, Jean, everyone else. What's up? All right. I'm excited for today's guest. So please help me welcome to the show, bringing him on. There we go. We have Sameet Gupta, who is the lead BI engineer at Notion. Sameet, thank you so much for joining the Everyday AI show.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot, Jordan, for the welcome and morning.
All right, I'm excited for this one. Before we get into this topic, which I'm going to try hard to shut up and let you talk a lot because I've got a lot of feelings on this one, Sameet. But can you first tell us a little bit about what you do in your role at Notion? I'm sure most people know Notion, but maybe just for those that don't as well, maybe if you could describe that as well.
Yeah, sounds good. So I lead the BI engineering at Notion. I support sales and marketing team here. If you've never heard of Notion, so Forbes like to call Notion as AI everything app. You can think of Notion as a blank canvas, and you can do pretty much everything. You can do notes, you can do database automation, you can create your own Gantt chart and project management. Notion can pretty much do everything nowadays, right? And I come from a place in India. I was born in Bombay. I've been in US for 10 years, and have been using AI like in professional life for like a couple of years now. And I'm pretty excited to talk about the topic. I'm actually like, as much as I'm excited, I'm also like, it's a topic which is very close to me, and I think it's the same with you also. So let's get going.
All right, let's get to it. Is using AI making us dumb?
Yes, and the short answer is yes, but allow me a couple of minutes to explain that part, right? In my role, right, at Notion, I day in, day out, my job is to write SQL query, SQL query. My job is to create dashboards and reports in Tableau. And, before AI, like let's say if I wanted to create a Tableau report, it would take me 3 to 4 weeks, right? Generally, there's a lot of to and fro involved with stakeholders, and I would go and write a lot of calculated fields. I'll do a lot of joins. I'll iterate over charts, right? But nowadays, whenever I get a request from my stakeholders, I'm like, okay, I strategize of how the dashboard might look like. What do I need? What calculated field I need, and then I feed that data into AI, right? You wouldn't believe I have premium subscription of pretty much anything, every AI that you can imagine. GPT, Perplexity, Claude, all the AIs have their own strengths, right? So in my case, I would go to, let's say, Claude and be like, you know what, create a calculated field for financial year, right? And comparing financial year metrics. And Claude will split out a 200-word calculated field, right? If I was to do that previously, right? If I was to do that, it would take me at least 4 to 5 hours to even get it right. With Claude, it does not even take 4 to 5 minutes. It probably takes like less than a minute, right? So it makes me productive, 100%. Like instead of spending two days writing calculated field, I'm finalizing my calculated fields and my metrics in like 2 hours, right? But the counter of that is it's made me lazy. Let's put it that way, right? And when you're lazy, you're not thinking really hard. And when you're not thinking hard, you're dumber, right?
It's so true, right? And I'm curious, Sameet, through your personal experience, because I I remember the early days, back in like 2020, right? Before ChatGPT came out, there's all these, essentially writing tools, right? And I was a journalist. And so I was using this technology early on and I'm like, okay, this is good. And then it started to get to a certain point for me, even before ChatGPT came out, that I'm like, wait, I'm starting to turn off my brain in some instances, right? And, you have to start keeping that in check. I'm curious, what was the point for you, right? When maybe the power of certain LLMs started to, really get really good. And you're like, wait, do I have to like sit back and look at how I'm using these? Like, did you have a certain point where you were like, whoa, I have to make sure I'm still using my brain?
Yeah, yeah. I remember the time that you're talking about because I think before GPT came out, there were like article rewriter services, right? Like Copy AI and those kind of companies, Word AI, etc. And those were great. But GPT came along, and then you're like, wait a minute, is this real, right? And as far as like a specific instance of when I felt this is like life changing, right? When I was at Snowflake, I was tasked to build like a Streamlit report, and then I'm not a Python wizard, right? So I started using GPT to like debug my code, part of my like trying to debug my code, because previously you would go on Stack Overflow, you would research, you would spend a couple of hours, and you try multiple different coding solutions to see if it's what's working, right? And then with GPT, I was able to do that in less than 30 minutes, right? And this is like early to 2022, late 2022, right? Where models were still not like great, right? It was great at the time, but now when you think about it, how Claude works, right, with the coding output, etc., and with Cursor AI, etc., right? In 2022, the fact that I did not need a mentor or a coding buddy to actually review my code and get the code working, that was a mind-boggling moment for me.
So what's your advice, maybe for people who are struggling? And, I'll even say like one of my personal examples, right? I said I'm a journalist, I do a lot of writing. I write a daily newsletter, right? And there's some instances where I use AI, and then there's some instances where I don't, because at least I feel if I start handing off one of my, most polished skills that I've been getting paid for 2 decades to do, if I just keep handing that off, I'm going to lose that skill, right? How can business professionals out there, Sameet, how can they find that balance?
Yeah, I think in my case, I'm not to a point where I'm handing my life off to AI yet. I don't think so. I will ever do that, because when you're in tech, if you're not learning, if you're not critical thinking, you'll be out of job in less than 6 months, right? And I'm completely aware of that, right? And to be honest, I only use AI for things that I am already great at, or need some support. I wouldn't go about and be like, oh, I'm an AI researcher, write a research paper of 30 pages, right? That's BS. That's not the best use of my time, right? Even if AI could write it, that's not who I am. That's not what I want to do. So in short, I want AI to do the repetitive task that I generally used to do previously, and in the areas that I am already expert in, right? I'm an expert in Google search, but nowadays with Claude just launched web search, right? Literally today itself. But before that, Perplexity. I would ask Perplexity to be like, you know what? Like literally early last week, I've been looking to like do a lot more speaking gigs this year. I went to Perplexity. I'm like, Perplexity, here's a prompt. Go about and search like data conferences or analytics conferences, which are still open for speakers. They have call for speakers, right? And Perplexity gave me like 25 different links. If I was to do that, right, it would take me a couple of hours, if not more, to even do that. So things that I'm expert in and which has a repetitive element to it, that's where AI shines.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, anything, with research, repetition, right? Things that don't like, if I'm researching something manually and I have 30 tabs open, like I think maybe that process is making me dumber, right? But by skipping it is probably making me smarter, right? Yeah. Not getting stuck down all these rabbit holes. But Sameet, I'm wondering, is there any downside, right? Like specifically like cost, right? Because sometimes, as an example with vibe coding, right? Because I think this is huge, right? When it comes to, coding, software development, everyone's just, sometimes maybe turning off their brain too soon. Is there a downside even to elements like that? Oh, I think we lost your audio there, Sameet. There we go.
Sorry. Yeah. So I think the vibe coding moment is here. I think a couple of weeks back, YC, right? Y Combinator published a post where 90% of the YC back startups are vibe coding, like their apps completely based off AI coding, right? I mean, that's great, but I think I have a couple of examples that I would want to talk about. One of them is like I read a post on X or Twitter as we used to call. Someone wrote a code and they used AWS access key, etc. And then the backend wasn't very secure, right? And then hackers were able to access backend, and the founder saw like $1 million bill, right? Because when you're vibe coding, you're not thinking of backend. You're like, oh yeah, the website looks pretty. The website looks great. I'm ready to get that funding. So that's one instance. Another instance is recently one of our non-technical stakeholders vibe code and wrote a SQL query. The SQL query with the joins and everything else should have taken less than like $50 to execute on our platform, like on Snowflake, but it took over $10,000 because when you're querying like trillions of rows, if you're not careful, if you're not efficient in writing your query, the select star statement can cost you thousands of dollars, and that's what happened, right? So that's the downside of using AI without really like. When I think of AI, I think of myself as a guardrail for AI, right? AI can do what I ask them to do, but it's my job to make sure there are guardrails around it and make sure that it's working, but it's not costing me dollars, right? Then it should.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? And so for those that aren't familiar, vibe coding, that's essentially when either non-technical people or people who know how to code, right, instead of just going in there and writing it by hand, they're just kind of passing it off to maybe a tool like Cursor or something like that. But if you're using the API, right, and you're paying the usage, yeah, those bills can skyrocket, right? I'm curious, Sameet, is there anything that you're doing actively, to ensure that you're still staying sharp, right? That you're not getting dumber, right? I think this is something I'm asking you, right? Because I need to find these things myself, because I sometimes find myself over reliant on large language models, right? What are you doing in your day-to-day to make sure that you don't hand off too much and finding that balance?
Yeah, I think my way of thinking, as I alluded to it, right? My way of thinking of best use case of AI is a repetitive task. Anything, let's say, and as I mentioned, like, especially in my case, right? When I'm SQL querying or when I'm writing or building Tableau dashboard, the first iteration is always mine, right? I'll go ahead and build the dashboards, right? Because I don't want to lose that touch. But once that first iteration is done, generally, after a point of time, you are like the way you have writer's block. Engineers and data visualizers like me can have that block too. So I'm like, okay, what do I do next? How can I improve? That's why AI comes into picture. Because think of AI. What's LLM? LLMs are being fed like with a million visualization, right? And they know like what to look, what's good, what's great, what's bad, right? So you can take their suggestion, and that's what I do. I take their suggestion. I'm like, okay, how do I improve this chart, right? How do I improve this query? Can I make this query more efficient, right? And that I have that cutoff, right? Without that cutoff, I would be even more dumber. I mean, I know I keep using dumber as a very loosely, but not that I'm dumb. Like I work for Notion, right? I mean, obviously we are all smart here, but the fact that cutoff is really important for me. I am hoping and praying that cutoff does not get lower and lower as the days pass, and it should ideally get higher and higher. And that is why I wanted to talk about this topic, because it's an emotional topic for me itself. Where I'm like, it's an inflection point where I'm like, I don't want to get this cutoff lower. I want to keep a high bar of making sure that I stay on top of my feet, I critically think, and I be in the job. The market is already rough. You don't want to make it easy for folks to not hire you.
Yeah, and now's a good time to point out, live stream audience, if you do have any questions for Sameet, make sure to get them in now. There was a recent study. We covered this one in our newsletter. It was from Microsoft. It was a great study. It was called The Impact of Generative AI on Critical Thinking. And it found that for knowledge recall, 72% of participants reported using much less effort compared to not using Gen AI. So Sameet, I think, right, and maybe this isn't a stretch, right, but I think of the brain as a muscle, right? The more you use it, the smarter you get. The less you use it, the more you turn it off, right? The dumber you get. And we hear constantly about how these LLMs and the benchmarks and these pseudo IQ tests, and it's getting to the point where as we quote unquote approach AGI or ASI or whatever you want to say, right, that any large language model is going to know more than any human. So how should we be addressing this, right? Because part of me is okay, maybe it's good to just give more and more to these large language models because they're smarter and they know it and I don't, right? Versus, okay, well, I'm not then developing new skills.
Are you still running in circles trying to figure out how to actually grow your business with AI? Maybe your company has been tinkering with large language models for a year or more, but can't really get traction to find ROI on Gen AI. Hey, this is Jordan Wilson, host of this very podcast. Companies like Adobe, Microsoft, and NVIDIA have partnered with us because they trust our expertise in educating the masses around generative AI to get ahead. And some of the most innovative companies in the country hire us to help with their AI strategy and to train hundreds of their employees on how to use Gen AI. So whether you're looking for ChatGPT training for thousands or just need help building your front-end AI strategy, you can partner with us too, just like some of the biggest companies in the world do. Go to youreverydayai.com/partner to get in contact with our team, or you can just click on the partner section of our website. We'll help you stop running in those AI circles and help get your team ahead and build a straight path to ROI on Gen AI.
Yeah. So that's exactly where you should have your own cutoffs, or where baseline of when you bring AI in your life. You cannot be bringing AI in your life for everything. I mean, you might be tempted to, right? But it's like, the way I think of it as you're getting short-term results for long-term losses, right? That's how I view AI. If I start using AI for everything in my life, let's say if you're a student, right? I think I saw a post last week from a Berkeley professor, and he's been teaching database for 10 years, and he noticed that people have stopped asking a lot of questions in the classes now, like students. But then he also realized that he's like, oh, maybe I've just become so great that students don't have any questions. But then during tests, right, midterms, the average score was the lowest it has been in last 10 years, right? Because students actually, without even trying to understand or learn, they're using AI to write assignments, But then when you have a midterms, right, in the class, you don't have access to, let's say, GPT. You are not going to recall what was taught because you just weren't focusing, or you did not stretch your muscle enough to in your assignments to retain or recall that information. So that's a very good use case of where AI is actually impacting, even younger generation. Because at least for us, we come from a place where we still have built that muscle, right? When we were growing up, right, we had to do it because GPT did not exist. I wrote a book, right, the Tableau Workshop. It took me a year and a half to write that book. Nowadays, if I was to do the same thing again, it would take me less than 3 months, because I know for a fact a lot of things would be GPT driven, right? So the fact that having that guardrail, having that cutoff for when to use AI and when not to use AI is going to be as critical as the fact that your prompts are supposed to be great.
Yeah, I think you bring up a lot of good points there, and I'm sure there's going to be many more of some of those types of stats, right? That just show, hey, scores across the board on certain standardized testing are probably going to continue to go down, especially when you can't use AI, right? Because I think that people are maybe leaning a little too heavily on it. So even for myself, right? I think the productivity piece maybe has that downside, right? Because I've never felt so productive in my life. I've never felt that I've learned so much in my life, right? Since AI came
Yeah.
out. You mentioned, being able to use something like a, quick search tool, Perplexity, deep research, Grok, deep research, OpenAI, deep research. So I feel I'm able to bring in all this knowledge, but then I just feel I forget it. Right? Like, do you ever find yourself, yes, now I'm more productive and more knowledgeable, but I'm still not retaining anything. Like, do you ever feel that way?
Yeah, I can give again. I specific example. I think one of the everyone who's listening in will understand. So when you type something in Google, let's say, right, and if you make a mistake, right, then Google says, "Did you mean, let's say, a word XYZ, right?"
Mm-hmm.
And you do not even try to make correct it. You just click on that, like the correct spelling, right, of that word, and you Google searches for you. Imagine like your ability to recall, like you when you're typing, you almost know that the spelling is going to be wrong, but you hope that Google's going to correct you, right? That
Totally.
happens far too often, right? So, and then to your question again, like, right? So I have started noticing that when I used to write SQL query myself, I would know how to write case when statement. I would know how to write, let's say, a specific function in SQL. But now, if I don't have GPT, I have to like, okay, how do I write even case
Mm.
statement, right? Because case statement can be complicated. So when that inflection point comes in, I'm like, I don't think so. This is working for me, right? AI is making productive, but then if the fact that I can't retain information anymore, I am becoming more of an AI than a human,
Yeah,
right?
that's a good point. And
So
as weird as this sounds, I find, and this is for me why this topic really does hit home. Like, I'm not exaggerating. I'll look up things on ChatGPT search, Perplexity, Google search, whatever, on a certain topic that I'm trying to learn. And in so many cases, and I kid you not, in so many cases, a lot of the first sources are myself, right?
Mhm.
And that for because I covered something 6 months ago, or I had a guest on, or I did a tutorial, right? And for me, it almost hurts, because I'm like, wait, I'm learning from myself, and I forgot this, and this was 3 months ago, 6 months ago. How did I forget this, right?
Mhm.
Um, is that going to become, do you think, more and more common, just our ability to retain information for a longer period, right? Like, I find myself struggling with this often.
Yeah, that's gonna happen. If we don't see, as I mentioned, with our like pre, let's say, 90s born folks, right, or pre 80s or 90s born, at least in our case, we grew up with that critical thinking ability, right? We were supposed to do our own job, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we both are able to talk about AI and how it's making us dumber, right? Talking about cutoffs and guardrails. For folks younger than us, like if you're 15 or 16 right now, you have like the whole computer in your palms, right? And you are like using AI for everything in your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that you did not go through that muscle building exercise for like a decade or two, right? You don't have that retain ability to recall or retain that much. Your muscles not built, right? Your brain muscles just not built. But I hope that as much as AI is a boom, right? It's helping folks. It does not turn into a curse in 5 to 10 years, where there's let's say now there's 10% of world population who can get, let's say, job in IT because of their critical thinking ability. But in 10 years, I hope there's not a that number still stays at 10 or above, not goes down to, let's say, 1 or 2%, because the top 1 or 2% who know how to use AI in the job are going to be millionaires right, are going to be in the market, in the demand for like years to come. But that top 1 to 2% are not going to run the world. You need more people, right? You need critical thinking ability. You need people who can retain and recall, and use AI to like as an assistant,
Mm.
not replace a real human with the AI. AI is your assistant, not like your personal full-fledged human who can do everything that you can imagine.
Mm. So
It should be
here,
complementary. It should be complementary. AI should always be complementary to you, not the other way around.
yeah. So anyone that's listened to the show, like you all know, I hate when people come on here and pitch their products. But Michelle is asking, and I feel Sameet, you have to take this one because asking, tell us more about Notion. Can it help with this retention? Like I got to give you that one because it's a softball because it's great for that.
No, 100%. So, if you've never heard of Notion, I highly recommend you. We have a free trial. I don't I'm not representing Notion here, right? It's all personal opinion. But go ahead, go to Notion.com, sign up for a free trial. You would be surprised with what Notion can do for you, right? Obviously, it's a note-taking app, but Notion now also has like assistant AI, which basically, if you connect your, let's say, Slack, you connect your other tools, right? And if you ask question, it's like a knowledge AI now, where it will search through your post messages on Slack. It will, if you were to use Notion in your professional setting, it will search through your docs and give you like relevant information, right? GPT works great, but it does not have access to your personal information, right? Or your company information or knowledge base in the company, and that's where Notion AI shines. The fact that you can, I have had so many instances with Notion AI where I'm like, did someone talk about, let's say, a metric, right? Because I've been at Notion for less than a year, so there have been metrics that have been the company has been using for multiple years, right? So like, okay, when was the first time someone mentioned, let's say, month-over-month retention for product users? So Notion AI actually goes through the whole Slack history that we have and gives me like exact link and conversation context of, okay, this is when, let's say, director of demand gen was talking about this, right? So the fact that Notion AI does that for you is amazing, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, that's one of the features of Notion AI. There's the fact that you can create notes, you can create automations, you can. If you are new to Notion AI, I would highly recommend you just Google Notion templates. People have the whole brain on Notion. There's the whole concept. Jordan, you would know, like there's a whole concept of like second brain on Notion.
Mm-hmm.
Just Google that term, second brain on Notion, and you would be amazed with what people can create.
Yeah, I do agree, and I was like, hey, perfect chance there to answer a question super directly. But this one might be controversial. So Sandra, thanks for this. She's asking, could this be the end of the knowledge worker, right? For decades we've gotten jobs, we've gotten promoted, right? Companies have grown into unicorns, trillion-dollar companies based on what its people know. Sameet, could we be, not now, right? But could we be seeing the end of the knowledge worker anytime soon?
I know folks talk a lot about, is AI going to take my job, or is AI going to replace me? I think that's partially true for jobs which has a lot of repetitive aspect to it, right? And I believe knowledge workers fall in that category. But the counter argument to that is, so if you're a knowledge worker, and if it let's say you were doing, let's say, 10 tasks a week, right? With AI, if you upgrade yourself, if you know how to use AI to complement your job, instead of doing 10 jobs, if you're doing 40 jobs now, because AI, right? AI can hallucinate. We all know that, right? AI is not perfect. Like anytime I see an AI output for a metric or something, I generally go about and verify that myself, right? And as a knowledge worker, if your job wouldn't be now to research a lot, but to validate what the research is saying. So instead of doing 10 tasks, if you upgrade yourself to do, let's say, 30 tasks, 40 tasks, you're always going to be in the demand. But if you are one of those lazy workers where you're still stuck at 10 and you ask AI to do 90% of your job, and let's say you do a report for CTO of your company, and the CTO uses that number in a board deck, and that number is absolutely weird and it does not make sense. you're not going to be in your job, because your job is to validate and verify, and obviously get that info. But if you don't validate and verify, you're going to be out of job, and that's not a good thing.
I think that's a great take there. Yeah. I'll have to save my my hot takes on that one for another day. But Sameet, so we've covered a ton in today's episode. From some of your personal examples and how sometimes using AI might just be more expensive. It might be better, right? It might be making us dumber in the end. But as we wrap up, what's your one most important takeaway for business leaders out there grappling with that same thing? Feeling, I'm becoming more productive, but I might be becoming a little dumber. What's your best takeaway for everyone?
Yeah, don't chase the hype. I think the hype right now is MCP and Model Context Protocol and vibe coding, right? Don't chase it. Think of your specific use cases, right? Think of all the repetitive tasks that your company has or you are doing, and think of, can AI help me here, right? Don't go chasing, can AI create reels for me with one click? Yes, it can, but is it going to add value to your audience? Probably not, right? So think of repetitive tasks where you can use AI as a complement, but don't think of replacing AI as your full-fledged assistant yet. And the way I like to believe is like, this is the worst AI will ever be, right? That's how I like to think. In 2 years ago, Claude AI, the coding output wasn't like great. Now Claude AI can build your website in less than 2 minutes, right? Like a full-fledged gaming thing with Unity, etc. So to business leader, as I mentioned, think of all the repetitive tasks that you can automate. Use N8N, use make.com, right? Automate your workflow. But don't chase the clout and don't chase those clickbaity titles. You can go on YouTube and you can find like people talking about how AI replaced how AI helped me structure my life. That's great, but those are just for recording purposes. You go talk to them. That's not a real use case.
Love it. I think some great takeaways and some wise words for those of us out there, struggling to walk that tightrope between, productivity, but still retaining all of that knowledge that makes us special, unique humans. So Sameet, thank you so much for sharing your time and talents with the Everyday AI Show. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jared. Thank you.
All right, everyone. There was a lot of great info there. If you missed anything, if you need to hear it again, if you need to know more, our newsletter is where that's going to happen. So if you haven't already, please go to youreverydayai.com, sign up for the free daily newsletter. If this was helpful, tell someone about it. Right. So if you're listening, maybe here on LinkedIn or Twitter, just go ahead, repost, retweet, re-X, whatever it's called. Help someone out. Also, help us out. Tune in tomorrow and every day for more Everyday AI. Thanks, y'all.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.
And that's a wrap for today's edition of Everyday AI. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a rating. It helps keep us going. For a little more AI magic, visit youreverydayai.com and sign up to our daily newsletter so you don't get left behind. Go break some barriers, and we'll see you next time.